This is the Tesla Model 3, and it might be the most talked about car in the entire history of the automobile. It certainly dominated the last 2 years of the news cycle, with Tesla being proud of some headlines, some that they'd like to boast about, and then some others that perhaps they wish weren't so well circulated. But at the end of the day, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? So the Model 3, it's currently available with two distinct powertrains. It has a mid-level battery pack with rear-wheel drive, and then what I have here, the larger long-range battery pack with all-wheel drive. I want to focus on what is this car actually like to drive? What does it mean to Canadian buyers? And can it justify its price tag? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go for a drive in the Model 3 today that has been lent out to me by a very nice owner that lives here in town. If you're looking to buy yourself a Tesla and still want to get some free supercharging, use his referral code down below. And then I'll share with you my thoughts regarding the interior, and then at the very end of the video, I'll break it down and put it in my ranking system. So without further ado, let's go for a drive. For this review, I'm going to avoid all of the politics with Tesla, of how it's run, the delays of the Model 3. Those are stories that have had enough discussion already. That's not the purpose of this video. I really just want to find out what the Model 3 is like to drive. Now, currently, it has to be said that you still cannot get the entry-level standard range for the Model 3. You either have the medium range or the long range. Currently, the long range battery pack is a 75 kilowatt hour battery with 2 electric motors, and in the performance spec produce 450 horsepower, 471 pound-feet of torque that have a claimed range of 499 kilometers. With the mid-range model, that starts out at a much more affordable price point of $60,000 Canadian, and that has a 62 kilowatt hour battery with 1 electric motor powering the rear wheels. The Model 3 is based on its own architecture. It shares some parts with the Model S and Model X, but it's on a far smaller platform. The interesting thing with the Model 3 is that they wanted to try and make the manufacturing as streamlined and as efficient as possible. So that means that there really aren't many options available with the Model 3. So the vehicle that you're looking at here, as the interior goes, is practically the same as what you would get in the mid-range model. So the thing that separates Tesla Model 3s are the amount of power that they produce, the amount of electric range that they have, and how many driven wheels the car uses. So this performance, it has everything. It has 4 driven wheels, it has the largest battery pack, and it has the most powerful motors in the Model 3. With the performance, there is actually the option to get the track package, and with the track package it adds the exclusive equipment like the larger 20-inch wheels, upgraded brakes, and a lower suspension. There's also a software update for a track mode. It's available currently in America, but the software update in Canada hasn't appeared yet. So what does 416 horsepower look like? At 45 kilometers an hour right now? That's now 80. Oh my god. That is what electric cars are capable of doing. There is zero lag because you have maybe 1 or 2 moving parts throughout the entire vehicle. So the second you hit that accelerator, you're gone. You're not relying on other things to happen in this car. In an internal combustion engine, how many different moving parts need to react and change and influence how you actually get moving? That intoxicating experience leaves you short of breath accelerating in any vehicle. But with this, because it's accessible at any speed, at any rev range, there isn't a tack in this car that can't really apply. It can happen anywhere. So the Model 3 has acceleration. Yeah, it's much faster than the Model S that I reviewed a little earlier this year. That car was the 85D, and that could do 0 to 100 in 4.3 seconds. This car has the claim of being able to do 3.5 seconds to 100. I'd actually say that the Model 3 rides firmer than I was expecting. This car is just, it's accepting all of these bumps in the road and all of these imperfections, and it isn't harsh or unrefined, but it's letting you know it's there. So it's set up in a sportier dynamic. That's interesting. These comfortable seats have a lot of foam padding to them. It is cancelling out a lot of those unpleasant feelings in this vehicle. And with the all-wheel drive, the computer is constantly figuring out what is the more efficient driving setup. You can change around the driving mode, so I can go from sport acceleration, you can change around the amount of regenerative braking, which could leave this vehicle as a one-pedal driving experience. Let's go up to 40 kilometers an hour, foot off. I'm now doing 21. That's how aggressive it can be in the standard regenerative braking, and that of course adds a little more juice into your battery pack. But every EV has that, and when you drive along town at sort of middling speeds, as I'm doing right now, of course it's quiet. You don't hear anything from the car. There is no noise, vibrations, and harshness. And you try to replace those noises with other things. And in the Model S I had, there was quite a bit of noise coming off of the wing mirror and around the door sills. This has the same frameless doors as that Model S, but I'd say that this car is actually significantly quieter. On the highway, I think it could use actually a little more sound deadening, because whenever a car passes, you can hear all the wind rushing off of that car. So yes, a Tesla Model 3 is just like any other electric vehicle to drive. It has a chunky steering wheel, and the steering is direct and sharp, so that contributes to a very enjoyable driving experience. But if you go for any trim level that's the Model 3, you're left with the same interior. So let's discuss this. All of the equipment that you get in the entry-level Model 3 currently is the same as what it is here. We have heated seats for every single seat, the 15-inch screen, the standard autopilot. The enhanced autopilot is a different thing. This is the upgraded hardware that you'll see with the cameras in the B pillar and down by the indicators. This is for the individuals that want to have a fully autonomous vehicle when the software update comes in the future, because that is kind of what Tesla is all about. They're as much computers as they are cars. Perhaps the biggest talking point of this Tesla is that they had such a hard-lined ideology of what they wanted the interior of this car to be. It was minimalist to a psychotic level of detail. There are very few buttons in this car. We have the hazard light, the two lights, a button to open up the doors, and then the window switches. These thumb dials are responsible for everything from turning up your volume, changing your cruise control speed, your cruise control distance, adjusting your mirrors, and the height and length of the steering wheel. And I'm sure there was a meeting at Tesla HQ where they said, do we really need window switches? Do we really need seat controls? Can they be on the touchscreen? Thankfully, they didn't go that far. The speed is displayed right in front of you on this display, and to me it isn't strange, because I've experienced a fair few Toyotas where they'll have the instrument cluster in the center and far away. So that isn't strange to me. Anybody else that has lived with a conventional vehicle with the tack behind the steering wheel, I get that might be a learning curve for you. And the real annoyance I've had with having so few of buttons really only pertains to one part, and that is the windshield washer. You only have one button here on the indicator stalk, and you can't change around the speeds on it. The only way they can do that is with the touchscreen down here. That's the thing that perhaps bothers me most, the one thing I haven't been able to get used to in my time driving this car. Everything else though seems very logical, and you use it all through the 15-inch landscape touchscreen that you have here, and it is the best touchscreen, best interface you can get on any car today. It has beautiful animations. Using the pinch to zoom on this map is better than what it is on a smartphone. So many people complain when you get into a 50, 60, 70, whatever the price range is for a car, that the screen, whatever you're using to interact with the infotainment system, is nowhere near as good as your latest phone, which is understandable. Cars are usually refreshed every 5 to 7 years, so the technology has been in development for a while. and it just won't seem new, even though it is brand spanking new. With the Model 3, it's updated like your phone. The owner of this 3 tells me he's had this car for 7 weeks and he's already had 5 software updates with this vehicle, introducing a few new systems like Navigate by Autopilot. Autopilot does all of the amazing things that we've seen previously. I don't really need to talk about that, but with the new Navigate by Autopilot, you set any destination in on your map. If you're on a long highway cruise, it will take the off-ramps for you, indicating everything. It's an incredible thing to witness. And extra Easter eggs that you access up here that include playing Atari video games, a romance mode, which, as far as my knowledge, doesn't actually have a window defogger setting. Anyway, but then so much more besides. And then another thing with this screen is that it is so solidly mounted into this vehicle, you would have to take a sledgehammer to it for it to move. Not that you ever would, because this touchscreen is the defining thing about this car, and it works incredibly well. But then what does that leave you with the rest of the interior? There's a lot of soft touch plastics on the door cards, even all the way to the very bottom of the door cards as well. I feel like I am in a premium vehicle. It feels like a better BMW than the last BMW I was in. That didn't have soft touch plastics all the way down to the very bottom. The Model 3 does feel like a next generation product. It feels significantly better overall in terms of build quality than what it did to the previous products I've tested out. Like I said, I feel like there's a lot of foam padding in this seat. There's a good amount of movement. For a tall guy, I would like a little more thigh support. There's plenty of leg room to move around. And when was the last time you saw a big slab of wood in a performance car? Tesla has received its fair share of criticism for the body panel fit and finish for the Model 3 exterior. I know the problem exists, but I'm looking at everything in this car and I just don't feel that. The suede inserts might flex a little bit here on the door cards, but the grab handle is solid. There's no flex anywhere. This owner actually had the wrap installed on this center console part, so you could get rid of the piano black plastic that I'm really not a fan of. For the rear seats, I can just about sit behind myself. I am 6'4", so it is challenging to find myself comfortable in a lot of vehicles of this size, but they split 60-40 that lead into a massive trunk. And then of course you also have the front trunk, or as everyone wants to call it, the frunk. But being British and us calling our trunks boots, I think the front boot should be called a fruit. I'm going to stand by this ideal. You can either agree or disagree with me in the comments down below. Perhaps the largest criticism I have with the Model 3 is its oddly shaped rear end. It's a 4-door fastback by classification, but it's kind of like a 2-box sedan or coupe hatchback. The annoyance with it is that for the Model S and X, they are hatchbacks. So Tesla could have followed through and have all of their cars as hatchbacks, which we all know are better vehicles. But because they wanted that fully glass roof, I think that's where the limit came along, and they couldn't physically make that happen. So it's a very oddly shaped piece, but the trunk is massive enough that it really couldn't cause much concern for you. And with this one, we have the 18-inch aero wheels. I love the look of them. They're more aerodynamically efficient, and they claim to boost your efficiency by about 5%. And that's a fair amount for what is essentially a plastic wheel covering. For Canadian buyers, if you're going and picking up a Model 3 without any kind of referral code, or you weren't grandfathered in by other previous Teslas that you've owned, it's going to cost you around 12 to 28 cents recharging at a supercharger for 2 different tiers in different provinces. So tier 1 is 60 kilowatts and below, and then tier 2 is above. If you want to try and get across Canada by using supercharging, that's currently not possible, but the network is forever expanding, and it seems like a lot of the new stations along the Trans-Canada are meant to come on within the next year or so. The Tesla Model 3 is without doubt one of the most impressive vehicles I have ever sat behind the wheel of. Despite all of that anticipation and the weight of it on its shoulders, it has somehow lived up to its expectations, and in my personal opinion has exceeded what I was thinking this car was capable of being. In some regards, it really does exceed them. I thought the buttonless interior was going to really be a horrible idea, and yet I'm standing here no longer thinking that anymore. The lowest barrier for entry for the Tesla Model 3 is that $60,000 rear-wheel drive 62 kilowatt-hour battery pack model, and I think the interior certainly very well represents something that would be worth $60,000. I would appreciate seeing perhaps some more exotic materials in a performance model such as this. But as I mentioned, the majority of the features stay the same, so if you're planning to buy any Tesla Model 3, you don't really have to compare the charts and see what options come in that one and come in that one. It's all largely the same. This Model 3 performance is for the enthusiasts of Tesla, the brand, and then the electric car movement in of itself. And the greatest merits of the Model 3 aren't strictly its performance and driving characteristics. It's again all down to that interior that you could get in any other Model 3 trim. It is that interior, the overall packaging and the mission of the 3 that make it such a wonderful vehicle, and that's exactly why I believe it is a segment leader. And for those of you that are looking at the performance long range, you're very likely again an enthusiast of the brand, and you have to see this model here as the same way that somebody would a BMW M3. You can go into that dealership buying a $40,000 320d, but then find your way into the top of the range M3. So the Model 3 is a premium car that I think could appeal for anyone that wants to change their thinking of what a car is capable of being. It introduces you with a whole new perspective and new things to learn. If you're someone that finds that exciting rather than a challenge, the Model 3 is the car for you. So that's been everything from me. Thank you so much for taking the time to watching this video. Please like the video if you liked it, share it if you think other people would like it too, and if you want to hit that subscribe button for me just down below, that does the world for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again.